Jake stepped out of the transport pod and onto Zephyr Station. His boots hit the metal floor with a solid sound that echoed through the docking bay. Around him, alien species moved with purpose and grace. Some had too many arms. Some had skin that glowed. Some moved on legs that bent in directions that should not have been possible. Jake did not care about any of this. He had seen worse things than unusual anatomy. He had seen things that had teeth in places teeth should not exist. He had seen predators that hunted in ways that made his stomach turn. Earth had taught him that the universe was full of creatures designed to kill, and that was just on one planet. The Celestial Haven was 3 stations up and 2 corridors over. Jake had heard about it from other soldiers on the base. They said it was the finest establishment in the entire sector. Only the important people went there. Only the elite from the most advanced species in the galaxy. Jake figured if he was going to have leave time, he might as well see what the galaxy thought was worth celebrating. His uniform was not the kind of thing that made people excited to see him walk through doors. The Planetary Defense Corps emblem was faded from years in the field. His jacket had a tear along the left shoulder, where something with claws had come too close during a training exercise. His boots were dusty because dust followed humans around like a bad memory. Everything about him said he was not the type of person the Celestial Haven wanted inside its walls. Jake did not care about that either. The elevator to the upper levels was smooth and silent. Everything on the station was smooth and silent. Humans had not built this place. Humans barely understood how it worked. The galaxy had been established for 10,000 years before Earth even knew there were stars worth reaching for. The technology here made human construction look like children building houses from sand. When Jake stepped out of the elevator, he knew immediately that he had made a mistake coming here. The lobby of the Celestial Haven was all crystal and soft lighting. The floor was so polished he could see his reflection, and he did not like what he saw. A man who looked like he had been through too much for his own good. A man whose eyes had seen things that could not be unseen. The receptionist was tall and elegant with skin that seemed to shift colors in the light. She looked up from her desk and her expression changed. It was not anger or disgust. It was something worse. It was the look of someone seeing something that did not belong. Jake walked forward anyway. This was something they had taught him in the Defense Corps. When you did not belong somewhere, the worst thing you could do was show it. Confidence was worth more than a weapon in some situations. "Welcome to the Celestial Haven," they said, though her voice suggested the words were coming from somewhere far away. "Do you have a reservation?" "No," Jake said, "but I have currency," and the door was open. The colors shifted again. Confusion, or maybe anger. Hard to tell with an alien whose face did not move the same way human faces moved. The Celestial Haven is an exclusive establishment. Membership is required for entry. Perhaps you would be more comfortable at one of the public lounges on the lower levels. Jake had heard this before. He had heard it on 17 different worlds. He had heard it from species with enough teeth to fill a shipping container and species with no teeth at all. He had learned that the answer to people telling him where he should be was to stay exactly where he was. "I'm a captain in the Planetary Defense Corps of Earth," Jake said. "I have fought in 3 sector wars. I have trained in combat protocols from 7 different species. I have more experience with survival and combat than most beings in this station. I think I can handle myself in a bar." The eyes narrowed. "Your rank means nothing here. Our guests come from the greatest powers in the galaxy. They do not wish to be disturbed by military personnel, especially not from species we barely know." Jake could see movement behind the other staff members preparing to remove him. This was the point where he should leave. This was the sensible option. Go down to the lower levels, find a place that wanted his business and spend his leave there. It was the logical choice. Jake had never been good at making logical choices. "Then I guess I will just take 1 drink at the bar and move on," Jake said. He did not wait for permission. He simply walked past the receptionist and through the entrance to the main bar area. The bar was everything he had heard it was, and nothing like what he expected. Crystal walls filtered light from multiple sources into something that seemed to come from inside the room itself. The patrons were arranged in small groups, talking in voices too quiet to hear clearly. No one was drunk. No one was loud. Everyone seemed to understand without being told that this was a place where control mattered more than anything else. Jake walked to the bar counter and sat on a stool that was probably designed by someone who had never met a human. It was too tall or too short depending on how he positioned himself. Nothing about it felt right against his body. The bartender was with skin like frosted glass and 3 eyes that all focused on Jake at the same moment. They did not say anything. He simply waited for Jake to explain why he was there. "What do you have that costs more than my monthly salary?" Jake asked. The 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "We have many such things." "Then give me the most expensive one you make." The bartender reached under the counter and pulled out a bottle that seemed to contain liquid made from frozen starlight. The bottle was so old that the label was barely readable. They poured a small amount into a glass that cost more than Jake's entire leave allowance. Jake lifted the glass and drank it. The taste was something between sweetness and pain. It burned going down but left something clean and clear in its wake. For a moment, everything else in the bar seemed to fade away. There was just the taste, the feeling of the drink, and the knowledge that he had done something stupid. When Jake set the glass down, he noticed that every alien in the room was watching him, not with anger or fear, with something closer to curiosity mixed with concern, like someone had just walked into a gathering of the most intelligent beings in the galaxy and ordered them around without knowing the rules. A tall officer, all chitinous armor and extra limbs, stood up from a table in the corner. His universal translator came to life with a sound like grinding metal. "Scum does not belong here." Jake turned to face the officer was 9 feet tall and built like something designed to fight wars. His armor reflected the light like a mirror. His movements suggested he had trained in combat for most of his life. Jake knew all of this because it reminded him of every other predator he had ever studied on Earth. "I am having one drink," Jake said. "That is all." They laughed. The sound was wrong in the bar. It did not fit with the soft elegance of everything else. It was a sound that belonged in places where things broke. They reached for Jake. This hand moved fast. For a creature that size, it was surprisingly quick. The claws extended from his palm, sharp enough to cut through the polished floor. The bartender screamed. The expensive furniture was about to have company in the category of things that could not be easily replaced. Jake did not think about what he was doing. Thinking was what got soldiers killed on Earth. On a death world, reaction was survival. His body moved before his mind caught up. This claw passed through empty space where Jake had been a second before. Jake slid backward off the bar stool and moved to the side. His movement was not graceful or impressive. It was efficient. It was the movement of someone who had learned to save energy because energy was something he might need later. They turned. His multiple limbs gave him advantages that most species did not have. He could strike from multiple angles at once. He could move in ways that seemed to defy the rules of how bodies should work. On his home world, he was probably unstoppable. On Earth, Jake had studied predators that could do similar things. 3 more officers stood from their table. They moved together like a pack, which meant they had trained together. Training showed discipline, and discipline meant they would coordinate their attacks. This made them more dangerous but also more predictable. They would not attack randomly. They would follow patterns. The first threw a punch aimed at Jake's chest. It was a straightforward attack, the kind of thing that would have crushed his ribs if it connected. Jake stepped forward instead of backward. He moved into the punch's arc and grabbed this arm just above the wrist. Using the creature's own momentum, Jake pulled it forward and down. The went flying over Jake's hip and crashed through a table. The aliens sitting there moved with surprising speed. Some species were faster than they looked. The second tried to come at Jake from the side. This was the correct tactical choice. By attacking from multiple angles, they reduced his options. Jake recognized this because he had trained against humans who did the same thing. He pivoted, using this attack as another source of momentum. The second officer went into the wall hard enough to crack the crystal. The bartender was now actively calling for station security. His 3 eyes were wide with panic. The most expensive liquor collection on the station was being destroyed, one alien at a time. He was probably going to lose his job over this. Probably his freedom too if someone died. Jake had gotten people in trouble before. It was something he carried with him, a weight that never quite went away. The third came with more caution. This one had learned something from watching the first 2 fall. He moved slower and kept his distance. He was trying to use his reach, trying to stay far enough away that Jake could not grab him or redirect his attacks. This was the smart move. This was also the move that would not work. Jake closed the distance. He did it the way everything on Earth taught prey animals to move. Quick, direct, without hesitation. They tried to strike, but Jake was already inside his guard. By the time the alien's limbs figured out what was happening, Jake had used several holds learned from studying how apex predators on Earth dealt with larger prey. The went down. This one did not get up. The fourth and final officer stopped moving. He looked at Jake with 3 different expressions playing across his chitinous face. There was anger there, certainly, but underneath it was something else. Something that looked a lot like respect. "You fight with knowledge," they said. His translator made the words sound like they were coming from very far away. "You do not waste movement. Every action serves purpose." Jake was breathing hard. The taste of the expensive drink was still in his mouth. His hands were shaking from the release of chemicals in his body that prepared him for combat. This was normal. This was what happened when humans ran on adrenaline. It was what humans had evolved to do when faced with things that wanted them dead. "I just want to be left alone," Jake said. "I did not come here looking for this." The lowered his limbs. He did not bow exactly, but it was close. The gesture meant something in culture. Later, humans would learn it meant respect. It meant acknowledgement of worthy combat. It meant something about understanding fighting as a form of communication when words were not enough. Around the bar, the other patrons were staring. They had stopped their conversation. The scholar with the antenna and the reflective skin had stopped writing notes in his personal log. They had put down their glasses. Even the floating species that communicated through color changes had gone still. A woman stood from her seat. She was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to contain actual lights beneath the surface. She moved with the kind of confidence that came from spending a lifetime making important decisions. "I am Ambassador Lyra of the Collective," she said. Her voice was clear and precise. "And I believe we need to have a conversation with you." Jake looked at her and recognized what he was seeing. This was power, but not the kind that came from weapons. This was the power that came from knowing how things worked in the galaxy. This was the power of someone who had spent a lifetime understanding how to move through systems of politics and trade and alliance. "I was having a quiet drink," Jake said. "You were having a quiet drink," Ambassador Lyra agreed. "And then you proved something that the entire galactic community needs to understand. You proved that humans are not what we assumed you were." The station security arrived then. They were a mix of species, armed with weapons that could probably destroy a small building. They looked at the destroyed furniture, the injured officers, the bartender who was now calculating whether suicide was preferable to the damages report he would have to file. Then they looked at the scene more carefully. They saw the 4 officers. They saw Jake standing in the middle of them, barely damaged. They saw Ambassador Lyra, who was the most important political figure in 3 sectors, stepping forward to defend him. The security officer in charge, a human who worked for the station authority, approached slowly. "Captain," he said, recognizing the Defense Corps seal on Jake's jacket, "we need to talk about what happened here." "These officers attacked me," Jake said simply. "I defended myself, that is all." The officer who had shown him respect stepped forward. "This is true. We attacked him without cause. This human showed patience and restraint. He did not attack first. He only responded to aggression." Ambassador Lyra moved closer to Jake. "I believe, Captain, that we have a great deal to discuss. Perhaps we could find somewhere less damaged to continue our conversation." Jake looked at the destroyed bar. He thought about the expensive bottle he had drunk. He thought about how a simple leave day had turned into something far more complicated than he had anticipated. "Sure," he said. "Why not? I have nothing but time." They moved to a private room in the station, far from the destroyed bar and the bartender who was still calculating damages. The room was simple but elegant, with chairs that seemed to adjust to whoever sat in them. Jake found his chair uncomfortable no matter what he tried, which was probably the universe telling him something about his place in the galaxy. Ambassador Lyra sat across from him. The scholar with the antenna sat to her right, his recording device active and capturing every word. The officer, who introduced himself as commander, stood nearby with his arms folded. Several other officials rounded out the group, mostly with one observer who still looked upset about his bar. "Let me begin by saying that what you accomplished tonight was remarkable," Ambassador Lyra said. "They are among the finest warriors in the galaxy. Their combat training is considered the standard against which all other military systems are measured. You defeated 4 of them with minimal effort and without causing permanent harm." Jake did not know what to say to this. In his mind, he had simply defended himself. He had used techniques that were basic, fundamental things that any human who had trained in the Defense Corps learned in the first weeks. The fact that it had impressed aliens meant only that they did not understand what Earth had made him. "Where I come from, what I did is not special," Jake said. "It is necessary. Every day on Earth is something trying to kill you. Every night brings predators that hunt in ways that would make your nightmares look simple. I learned to fight the way humans learn to breathe. It is just something we do." The scholar leaned forward, his antenna quivering with excitement. "This is extraordinary. Earth is classified as a death world in our records. This means it is a planet where the environment and the native life forms are extremely hostile to external species. However, we have assumed that the humans who evolved there would be adapted to that environment in ways that made them less capable in other conditions." "We assumed wrong," Commander said. He sounded like he was admitting something that bothered him. "On my world, we are the hunters. We are the apex predators. We have never had to worry about things that want to eat us. Our bodies evolved for offense, not defense. Our minds developed to command and attack, not to survive and adapt. This human has shown me that survival is a stronger teacher than dominance." Jake looked at the officer. "You are a good fighter. In different circumstances, you would have had me. You just did not understand what you were fighting. You expected me to be weaker because my species is younger and our technology is less advanced. That is the kind of mistake that gets soldiers killed." "We make that mistake often," Ambassador Lyra said. She was watching Jake with the intensity of someone trying to understand something that did not fit into her previous understanding of the universe. The collective has operated on the assumption that technological advancement and cultural sophistication are the primary measures of a species' value. We have believed this for so long that we have stopped questioning it. You have shown us in the span of an evening that there are other forms of strength that we have overlooked." The observer finally spoke. His voice was like wind moving through hollow places. "The cost of the damages to the Celestial Haven will be considerable. The furniture alone exceeds 50,000 trade credits. The liquor collection represents centuries of acquisition." "I will pay for the damages," Jake said. He did not know how. His military salary was barely enough to cover his basic needs, but this was something he understood. He had broken things. He had to pay for them. That was how responsibility worked. Ambassador Lyra raised her hand. "That will not be necessary, Captain. The damages are of minimal concern compared to what we have learned here. In fact, I believe the Celestial Haven will benefit greatly from this incident. The bar will become famous across the galaxy as the place where humans prove their worth." The scholar was still recording, his antenna now moving in patterns that suggested deep thought. "What I find most fascinating is the evidence of cultural coherence. Humans have only been spacefaring for 70 years. In that time, they have not been assimilated into larger civilizations or broken into competing factions. Your species remains fundamentally unified. You share values, training methods, and ways of understanding the universe. This is remarkable for such a young species." "This is what Earth taught us," Jake said. "You cannot survive on a death world if you are fighting each other. The predators will eat you. The environment will kill you. The only thing that kept humanity alive for thousands of years was our ability to work together. Everything else is secondary to that." Commander made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been something that biology required for processing difficult information. "I will inform the High Council about this encounter. I believe they will want to establish formal military protocols with your species. We could learn much from each other. You could learn from our discipline and organization. We could learn from your instinct for survival." "There is more," Ambassador Lyra said. She slid a data tablet across the table toward Jake. "The collective is prepared to offer humanity a formal position in the Galactic Economic Union. This would grant your species access to advanced technology, trade networks, and information that has been restricted until now. In exchange, we ask only one thing." "What?" Jake asked. "That you remain human," Ambassador Lyra said. "We have seen too many species lose themselves in pursuit of advancement. They abandon their fundamental nature to become something that fits better with galactic society. We do not want this for your species. Your instinct for survival, your willingness to stand firm even when it would be easier to surrender, your refusal to accept that the universe has a verdict about what you are capable of, these things are valuable. They are rare. The galaxy needs them." Jake looked at the data on the tablet. It was complex and written in a technical language that would require months of study to fully understand, but the basic outline was clear. Earth would be elevated from a newly contacted species to a full participant in galactic civilization. Humans would have access to technologies that would take them centuries to develop on their own. Their place in the universe would be secured. "I cannot make this decision," Jake said. "This is something that goes to the Earth government. I am just a soldier." "You are more than that now," Ambassador Lyra said. "You are the human who walked into the Celestial Haven and proved to the most advanced civilization in the galaxy that we have been measuring value by the wrong standards. That makes you someone who speaks for your species, whether you intended it or not." Jake thought about all the humans scattered across different worlds and different stations. Scientists and traders and soldiers and explorers. People who had come from Earth with nothing but the knowledge of how to survive in places where everything wanted them dead. People who had built something in the void between stars. "I will take this to Earth Command," Jake said finally. "I will tell them what happened. I will tell them what you are offering. And I will tell them that I believe we should accept. But the final decision belongs to my people." Ambassador Lyra smiled. It was an expression that crossed species boundaries. It meant satisfaction with the outcome of a negotiation. It meant understanding that they had found common ground. "That is all we ask," she said. The next morning brought the official announcement. The collective had released a statement to the galactic news networks. The message was simple. Humanity was being formally recognized as a species of significant strategic and cultural value. Earth was now a full trade partner in the Galactic Economic Union. The embargo on advanced technology transfer was being lifted immediately. The galaxy did not know what to do with this information. Messages started coming in within hours. The High Council sent a formal request for military consultation protocols. The Federation expressed interest in cultural exchange programs. The scholars' species, whose name translated roughly to the observers of first knowledge, wanted to establish research partnerships. Every faction that had previously dismissed humanity as a newly contacted and relatively unimportant species suddenly wanted to know more about these aliens who had impressed Ambassador Lyra. Jake spent most of the morning answering questions. Station officials wanted to know exactly what had happened in the bar. Military analysts wanted to understand his combat techniques. Scientists wanted to study his physiology and understand what made humans different. Everyone wanted something from him, and Jake was starting to understand why people in positions of power looked so tired all the time. Commander found him in the station's observation deck in the afternoon. The officer moved with the kind of careful respect that soldiers showed each other when they recognized shared experience. "I have been thinking about our combat exchange," Commander said. His universal translator worked well with the clicking vocalizations. "In my analysis, you were never trying to defeat me. You were trying to teach me something about the way you understand fighting." "You are smart for someone made of shell and rage," Jake said. It was a human way of speaking, something between insult and compliment. They understood it correctly. "On my world, fighting is simple. Stronger wins, faster wins, bigger wins. Everything is measured in absolutes," Commander said. "Your species learned that sometimes weaker must beat stronger, sometimes slower must beat faster. This requires understanding and knowledge. This requires respect for the opponent. We do not have this in culture." They stood together in silence for a moment, looking out at the void of space. The twin suns of Zephyr Station's system hung in the darkness like cosmic jewels. "I will tell my people what I have learned," Commander continued. "I will tell them that strength is not always what wins, that knowledge and understanding and respect for your opponent can be more valuable than raw power. Some will not believe me. Some will think I have been influenced by association with humans, but some will understand, and that will be enough to change things." "Change is always hard," Jake said. "On Earth, most people resist it. They would rather stay the way they are, even if staying means they will eventually die. But time pushes forward. The universe does not wait for species to be ready." "Your species has learned something important," Commander said. "You have learned how to change. You have learned how to adapt. This is your greatest strength, not your weapons or your technology. Your ability to become something new while still remaining fundamentally human. This is what makes you dangerous." Ambassador Lyra contacted Jake that afternoon. She had moved quickly in the way that high-level diplomats moved when they saw an opportunity. She had arranged for him to speak directly to the Earth government through the secure communication channels. A transmission had been scheduled for the evening. The highest leaders of human civilization would be watching. They would want to know exactly what their soldier had agreed to in their name. Jake spent the hours before the transmission thinking about what he would say. He thought about Earth, about the predators and the storms and the environments that wanted you dead at every moment. He thought about the humans who had learned to survive those things, and then somehow managed to get into space despite being outnumbered and by species that had 10,000 years of technological advancement. He thought about the meaning of being human. It was not about being the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced. It was about being the thing that refused to quit. It was about being the species that could walk into impossible situations and find a way to survive. It was about having something inside you that would not accept defeat, would not surrender hope, would not let the universe tell you what you were capable of. The transmission room was clean and efficient. A technician sat at the controls, adjusting frequencies and making sure the quantum-encrypted connection would be stable enough for real-time conversation across light years of space. On the screen, the faces of Earth's leaders appeared. General Hayes, the head of the Planetary Defense Corps. Ambassador David Carter, who handled all of Earth's diplomatic relations with the galactic community. President Susan Reeves, who was responsible for the entire human civilization. They looked tired and worried, which was probably the correct response to a situation where your soldier had apparently changed the course of human history. "Captain," President Reeves said. Her voice came through the speakers with only a slight delay caused by the distance between worlds. "We have received reports from the collective. They claim you have agreed to a formal incorporation of Earth into the Galactic Economic Union. Is this accurate?" "Partially accurate," Jake said. "I did not agree to anything. I told Ambassador Lyra that the decision needed to come from Earth. But I can tell you that the collective, the High Council, and several other major factions are offering us full trade partnership status." "At what cost?" General Hayes asked. She was not a diplomat. She thought in terms of what you had to give up. "That is the interesting part," Jake said. "They are asking us to remain human. They do not want us to assimilate. They do not want us to abandon our culture or our values or our ways of understanding the universe. They want humanity to keep being what we are." "And what is that?" Ambassador Carter asked. Jake thought about the moment in the bar when they had realized that the humans they had underestimated had just defeated 4 of their best warriors. He thought about the respect in Commander's voice when he acknowledged that Earth had taught survival in ways that no technological system could match. "Survivors," Jake said. "We are the species that learned how to survive on a world where everything was trying to kill us. We learned that together we are stronger than anything alone. We learned that refusing to accept defeat is sometimes more powerful than weapons. We learned that the universe is full of things that are stronger and faster and more advanced than us, but that does not mean we cannot find a way forward." "These are good things to be known for," President Reeves said. "But Jake, we need to understand the consequences. If we accept this offer, we are committing humanity to a new path. We are committing to being part of something larger than ourselves." "We already are," Jake said. "Humans are already scattered across 7 different star systems. We are already trading with alien species. We are already putting our people into situations where they have to understand alien cultures and alien ways of thinking. This just makes it official. This just gives us the tools to do what we are already doing more effectively." General Hayes made a decision that she had probably already made before the transmission began. "I recommend acceptance of the collective's offer. Captain has demonstrated that humans can gain respect through action rather than through previous cultural status. This is an opportunity we cannot ignore." "I agree," Ambassador Carter said. "With proper preparation, this could be the beginning of Earth's true place in galactic civilization." President Reeves looked at the camera, and Jake understood that she was looking at him across the void of space. "Captain, you were sent on a routine leave assignment. You have returned having changed the course of human history. The Earth government formally accepts the collective's offer of trade partnership status. You have our authorization to proceed with all related negotiations and protocols." The transmission ended. Jake sat alone in the quiet room, understanding what had just happened. Humanity was no longer a young species trying to find its place in the galaxy. Humanity was now a recognized partner in something far larger than itself, and it had taken nothing but a human walking into a bar and being willing to fight for his right to be there. 3 months had passed since the incident at the Celestial Haven. Jake was no longer simply a soldier. He was now officially the human liaison to the Galactic Council. His job was to explain humanity to the most advanced species in the galaxy, and to explain the galaxy to the Earth government. It was exhausting work that required him to understand multiple cultures, multiple ways of thinking, multiple assumptions about how the universe worked. The Celestial Haven had been rebuilt. The owner, the bartender who had despaired about damages, was now famous across the sector. He served drinks in an establishment that had become legendary. Tourists came from across the galaxy to stand in the place where humans had proven their worth. The bar had become a historical landmark, which probably meant it would never be destroyed again, no matter how many alien species got into fights. Jake stood in the diplomatic quarters of Zephyr Station, looking out at the twin suns of the system. Ambassador Lyra stood beside him, her skin rippling with colors that suggested satisfaction. "Earth has accepted the first shipment of advanced technology," she said. "Your scientists are already beginning to integrate the materials into your existing systems. In 10 years, humanity will have technology that would have taken you 1,000 years to develop on your own. And in 20 years, we will probably start causing problems with it," Jake said. He had learned to be honest with they preferred direct communication to diplomatic niceties. "Almost certainly," Ambassador Lyra agreed. "But that is the nature of advancement. Species grow, species change, species sometimes make mistakes. The question is whether they learn from those mistakes or repeat them." Commander arrived at the observation deck with the kind of military precision that they were famous for. His armor gleamed, and his movements suggested that he had been training extensively. He and Jake had formed something approaching friendship in the months since the incident. "I have news from the High Council," Commander said. "They have approved the establishment of a joint military training program between the and human forces. We will share combat techniques, tactical knowledge, and strategic understanding. This is unprecedented. No other species has ever been asked to share such sensitive information." Jake understood what this meant. They were saying that they trusted humans. They were saying that they believed humans could be partners rather than competitors. They were saying that the species from a death world was worthy of respect. "There is more," Commander continued. His translator made it sound like the words carried weight. "The wish to establish a ritual. Each cycle, a warrior from the will face a warrior from humanity in honorable combat, not for dominance, not for victory, but for the purpose of understanding, for the purpose of learning from each other. This is how honor warriors they respect." Jake felt something catch in his chest. This was not just recognition. This was the kind of honor that culture reserved for species they considered equals. It was something that would have seemed impossible 3 months ago. "I am honored," Jake said. "Earth will accept this ritual. We will provide our best warriors, and they will learn from your best fighters." The scholar with the antenna arrived shortly after Commander. His name, when translated, came out as something close to observer of patterns, though he preferred to go by his short designation, the scholar. His species had made a proposal to the Earth government that involved establishing research facilities on Earth to study human adaptation and survival strategies. "We believe that understanding how humans developed problem-solving capabilities under extreme pressure could revolutionize how we approach scientific challenges," the scholar explained. His antenna quivered with excitement. "Your species has learned to be creative in ways that other civilizations have not. This comes from scarcity and danger. This comes from learning that sometimes the rules do not apply and you must make new ones to survive." "You want to learn how to break rules," Jake said. "Precisely," the scholar agreed. "We want to learn how to innovate, how to adapt, how to find solutions that we have not considered because we have lived in stability and abundance. Humanity can teach this to us." That evening, Jake attended a celebration in his honor. The collective had organized something they called a recognition of value ceremony. It was a strange gathering of alien species all coming together to acknowledge that humans had earned a place among them. They served drinks and food. They made speeches. They explained to the galaxy that Earth was now a full and equal member of galactic civilization. Jake found himself standing alone in one of the observation areas while the celebration continued without him. He thought about Earth, about the storms and the predators and the harsh environment that had shaped his species. He thought about all the humans who had come before him, who had survived things that should have killed them, who had refused to accept defeat even when defeat seemed inevitable. A message came through his personal communicator. It was from General Hayes back on Earth. The general had sent him a simple image. It was a photograph of Earth from orbit. The blue and green planet hung in the darkness of space, looking fragile and beautiful and somehow strong all at once. The message said, "This is home. Tell them what it took to survive here. Tell them what it will take to survive anywhere else." Jake understood what the general was saying. Humanity had not come to the galaxy because it was easy. Humanity had come to the galaxy because staying home was getting harder, and humans had learned long ago that the only answer to impossible situations was to keep moving forward. He held the image of Earth in his hand and thought about what would come next. The collective would start sharing technology. They would start sharing military tactics. Scientists from 100 different species would come to Earth to study how humans had managed to survive on a death world. Earth would change. Humanity would change. But underneath all that change would be something fundamental. Underneath all the advancement and all the integration into galactic society would be the knowledge that humans were the species that refused to quit. Humans were the species that looked at impossible odds and decided that surrender was not an option. Humans were the species that had crawled out of a death world and managed to stand as equals with the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Jake, the soldier who had walked into a bar and changed the course of human history, turned from the observation window and walked back toward the celebration. There was work to do. There were alliances to strengthen. There were ways that humanity could prove itself worthy of the opportunity it had been given. But more than that, there was the knowledge that everything humanity had become was because of what Earth had taught it. Every struggle, every moment of refusing to accept defeat, every innovation born from desperation and necessity, all of it had prepared humanity for this moment. Jake thought about the celestial haven and the who had shown him respect. He thought about Ambassador Lyra and her understanding that value came in many forms. He thought about Commander and the ritual combat that would be fought between species that had learned to see strength in different ways. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. The galaxy had assumed that technological superiority was the only measure of capability. The galaxy had been wrong, and in being proven wrong, the galaxy had gained something that it had not known it was missing. It had gained a species that understood survival. It had gained a species that knew how to face impossible odds and find victory not through overwhelming force but through understanding and adaptation and refusal to accept defeat. It had gained humanity. As Jake walked back into the celebration, he heard laughter from a dozen different alien species. He heard them saying his name in ways that their different throats could manage. He heard them celebrating not just him, but what he represented. He heard the sound of the galaxy beginning to understand that it had been measuring value by the wrong standards for 10,000 years. Earth had been a death world. Earth had made humanity into survivors, and now the galaxy was learning what that meant.